Iron Man 2 this time around.
Yes, so we talked about the Hulk last episode, and now we got Iron Man 2. So we've done. This is our third.
This will be our fourth, I think. Yeah.
Oh, because we did Falcon and Soldier. Yeah.
So we did Falcon the Winter Soldier.
Falcon Winter Soldier. Then we're starting over. We're starting from the beginning of Iron Man. And then we've got the Hulk, Incredible Hulk, and then we've got Iron Man 2. So very good. All right. The sequel to Iron Man.
Yep.
Robert Downey Jr. Don Cheadle is now Rhodey. And we've got some other characters as well. We've got Scarlett Johansson is going to be our Black Widow. We've got Jon Favreau is back as Happy. We got Mickey Rourke, which I think steals the show. Mickey Rourke is so good. We've also got we have Paltrow and this one dude, Justin Hammer's played by Sam Rockwell, or Sam Rockwell's played. No, I got Rick for something. Yeah, so pretty good cast. I don't know if I think it's a good movie, but it's a good cast.
I thought it was all right.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Iron Man movies just don't match up to the rest of them. Like, it's just kind of weird. Like, it's just
the first Iron Man movie still holds up in my opinion. That's a really good movie.
Yes, the first Iron Man movie definitely holds up. The second one's got some places, but like I said last episode, we've got a lot of world building right now, which is getting in the way of the story. And then Iron Man 3 is just a hot mess, and we'll talk about that when we have to.
All right, yeah, I don't remember it being a hot mess. I know you're down on it, so we'll definitely talk to that.
I think when you watch it again, maybe I should rewatch it. But it's got a lot going on. Anyway, let's start with your questions.
All right, Ivan.
Yep.
Is he from the comics?
Oh, man, I was anticipating you asking me about him, so I did a lot of research. Okay, so Mickey Rourke plays Ivan, last name, I got him queued up here. Give me a second. Ivan Vanko. So here it is.
Okay.
Anton Vanko is from the comics way back in the day, but he was called Crimson Dynamo.
In the movie, that's Ivan's dad.
Exactly. So Anton Vanko was a spy in Stark Industries and stuff like that. Ended up getting deported. The Black Widow actually tried to assassinate him in the comics. Really interesting stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on with that. Then we get the Iron Man 2 movie where Anton Vanko dies and his son Ivan takes over. It turns into Whiplash. There is a Whiplash comic villain in the comic books. I'm not sure if it's Anton, but Marvel retconned the whole thing and made Ivan Vanko Whiplash in the current comics, but changed his name to Anton. So right now in the Marvel universe, there is an Anton Vanko, which is Whiplash, but the original Anton Vanko was Crimson Dynamo. It's just like, it's really weird what they did. They did it in the Marvel did a lot of retcon stuff in a way that doesn't make a lot of sense. But
it's like they didn't even have to do that if they just got the names right in the movie.
No, they didn't have to do that at all. I don't know why they did that. Yeah. And we actually get, so if you look at the the movie version of Ivan, he is Whiplash, but he's also Crimson Dynamo. Like, the Whiplash character in the comic books never had this kind of Stark tech or anything like that. So what Marvel did was took Crimson Dynamo, changed him for the movie, changed his name to Ivan, and gave him Whiplash characteristics. So they melted together 2 or 3 different characters to create Ivan Vanko. It's kind of convoluted, but it's fine for what it is. I think if the only reason it works is because of Mickey Rourke. He does a really good job. He brings that character to life in a way that I thought was very impressive. And nobody else in the movie does a good job as him. Like, every time Mickey Rourke's on screen, I had a great time. Him and Justin Hammer, when he was on screen, I thought they both did a fantastic job. What's his name again? Sam Rockwell. So when Sam Rockwell and Mickey Rourke were on screen, I was having a great time. Everybody else, I was like, whatever. But when these two guys were doing their thing, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, my son was watching this with me, and I had to tell him that that Sam Rockwell, the actor, does a really good job of playing likable characters in other movies, which means the fact that we both hated him a lot in this movie means he's just a really, really good actor.
He is. I agree 100%. I think he really brought a lot of work to that character. Like, he's just fun to watch. And so Mickey Rourke, fun. Sam Rockwell, fun. So that was good. So yes, to answer your question, Ivan definitely from the comics.
Well, wait, is Ivan from the comics or is
No.
his dad from the comics?
Okay, so the idea of Ivan Vanko and his father,
the superheroes, all those ideas come from the comics.
Yes,
but the characters,
the ideas. So it's a really interesting soup. There's a lot going on. So yes and no.
Right. Okay. Well, since that's all complicated and everything, one of my questions was, what about the bird?
No,
I'm thinking the bird. Yeah, the bird's not from the comics
at all.
Okay.
There's no.
It was a really weird, significant thing in the movie to not have come from the comics in my mind.
Yeah, it's just a kind of a fun thing, but no, it has no comic. Yeah. I wish it'd be kind of fun for the bird to have his own comic book series. But no,
I was kind of expecting you to be like, yeah, Mike, the bird's from the comics, and Ivan can telepathically talk to the bird. Just like the Falcon.
Well, listeners, if I'm wrong, because it could be a storyline. Who knows? But no, definitely not. Well, who knows? It could be. Well, I don't think so.
I'm glad that's not the case. All right. So you already talked about this a little bit. Ivan's dad did actually work for Howard Stark in the comics.
Yep.
But you said he was a spy for Stark Industries or spying on Stark Industries?
He was spying on Stark Industries. From the research that I did, he was spying on Stark Industries.
Okay, so that's just like the movie then.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else about that at all?
No, not really. But what I thought was interesting was you have this like old. So Anton Vanko was from the 1960s. So we've got all the anti-communist stuff that was in the 50s. Kind of blending itself into Iron Man. We've already talked about that a little bit with the Vietnam War and everything else. The Vietnam War, well, I don't know. Anyway, so you still have this Red Scare kind of stuff, like Russians as a villain. So that's kind of playing out here, but not nearly as much as it was comics back in the day. So like the idea of the Crimson Dynamo as a villain, like a red super hero in a red metal suit, like that's a straight up like anti-communist propaganda, which I thought was really interesting. So, again, no, not really. But Russia's a failed state in Iron Man 2, and kind of like now. So, like the idea that this poor guy his dad died. He's a physicist, and his dad helped Howard Stark create the technology that saved Tony Stark's life. And it's like you have Tony Stark, who is like super popular Iron Man flying around, and then you have Ivan Vanko, who's like just lost his father, and that kind of parallel. I wish they spent more time on that parallel instead of just kind of him. He did the revenge storyline. I thought was pretty good, but it could have been amped up a lot more. But I thought it was like that's the strongest part of the movie. I think I kind of wish they would have amped it up a little bit harder, but it's pretty good.
All right. Are the Stark Expos part of the comics? But before you answer that, I'm going to guess that they're not, and that this is just some kind of a tie-in with Disney, because I get huge. So from Howard Stark, Tony's dad, talking about the city of the future in this movie, I get huge vibes of Walt Disney talking about EPCOT. There's a video I've seen of Walt Disney explaining what EPCOT's going to be. And it seems like Howard Stark talking about the city of the future is incredibly heavily influenced by that Walt Disney video I've seen.
Yeah, no, you nailed that one. There used to be so there used to be a thing in real life where it was like what was it called? The World's Fair. Do you remember that?
Was it the World's Fair?
I think they used to call
it. I can't believe we're both drawing a blank on it, but yeah, there used to be this expo that would take place in like big cities around the world.
Yeah.
The Eiffel Tower, I think, is the result of one of these.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff around the world that's a result of almost like how the Olympics will build up infrastructure in a town.
Yeah.
This fair, this expo would do the same thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that is what it's calling to the World's Fair. I'm looking up real quick.
No, that's a real life thing, not a comic book thing.
I'm looking at pictures right now. The 1964 New York World's Fair.
Okay.
There's a picture of it, and it has a huge globe, just like they had in the Iron Man 2 movie. So yeah, it's based off the World's Fair.
Okay, but that doesn't play in the comics.
No, not at all. But I think it's really interesting. It says here, the Wikipedia says a World's Fair or World Fair is a large international exposition designed to showcase achievements of nations. I remember talking about the World's Fair back in the day, and man, I've always wondered why we don't have one. But there is one. The next World Expo will take place in Dubai in March 2022. It takes place from August 2021 to March 2022. So we're still doing it. Does whatever
you're looking at say when the last one of these was? Because yeah, I thought it was something completely.
Yeah, it's called the World. It's called the World. It's the World Expos now. Huh, I'll have to take some more. I remember as a kid I used to hear about these, right. And the Iron Man 2 Expo is just based off that.
Okay, but I'm gonna try to find a link to that Walt Disney video that I've seen.
Yeah. So I kind of wish we did more of these kind of stuff, man. It sounds fun, and like I definitely would go. You know?
Yeah, right.
We're at the tail end of a pandemic right now, but before that I would went.
Yeah. All right. So in a previous episode, we talked about how these upcoming Iron Man movies would have displays of all the different Iron Man iterations or
yep.
Mark. This one has 4.
Yep.
They set it up like the camera shows all 4 of them pretty clearly. They have a display over them that labels them all. I'm going to read out the labels and see if there's any significance back to the comics for this stuff. So it's got the Mark 1, and that one's labeled as Reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the Mark 2, that one's labeled as Prototype. Mark 3, Battle Damage. And Mark 4, Awaiting Upgrade. Does that mean anything to you as a comic book reader?
Well, like I said last time we talked about Iron Man, his reiterations of his suit's a big deal. Like a new suit's always a massive big deal. It's always an improvement, and so that's what the show's kind of harking back to. The new suits, Iron Man trying to improve himself, trying to improve his suit. So yeah, the comic books are the movie is respecting the idea that there's 2 things that people love about Iron Man, Tony Stark himself. But the suits are it. The suits are what we're looking for. A new suit's always a big deal. And at the end of Iron Man 2, of course, he does get a brand new suit. I think it's cool.
Okay, and then the Mark II, the Prototype, that's what Rhodey wears in this movie.
So Rhodey steals that for that fight scene. So he takes it, and he has a little... he takes it because I guess he wants to... In the fight scene in the movie... Tony Stark's kind of drunk in a suit, which is a problem. And then Rhodey has to put the suit back on, puts the suit on to kind of calm him down or protect himself.
Doesn't really do a good job of calming him down, though.
No, they're just getting it's a nice little set piece fight scene.
Right.
But then, of course, Rhodey takes the suit to the military so they can retrofit it. But I talked about this a little bit in Iron Man 1 when we talked about Iron Man original, the first one. Tony Stark has a drinking problem, a serious drinking problem, where he's an alcoholic. And in the comics, he has to actually take a break from being Iron Man because of it. I don't know why the movies don't really delve into this. I guess they don't want their main character to be alcoholic. Maybe it'd be too big. But instead, they give him health problems. So the palladium in his chest is poisoning him. So that's his first problem. And he's depressed about it because he's dying. And then we have one scene where he drinks too much. He gets drunk. And then that's a problem. But in my opinion, Iron Man 2 should have been about him being an alcoholic. And it's interesting. I was watching Iron Man 2. Tony Stark is kind of an ass. That's not a cuss word. I'll just use it. It's an ass. Like he's boisterous. He's kind of flippant. He's like flippant. He doesn't want to manage his company anymore. He like in one scene he testifies in front of Congress and he's a jerk to them. He drives his own race car in a race and like he just have those self-destructive tendencies is reminiscent to alcoholism, like just like that. And like I kind of wish the movie would have just said, you know what, this is going to be about Tony Stark being an alcoholic, and we're going to work on it. But maybe they were worried about the long term implications of it. Maybe they were worried about how it would be received, because like in a 2-hour movie, a person can't go from alcoholic to a non-alcoholic. You know, like I'm an alcoholic, I need to go AA. I guess they didn't want to deal with that, but it's a missed opportunity in my mind, because instead they're kind of hitting around the edges, but they never really embrace it. But Iron Man 2 is the last time we see those self-destructive tendencies. We don't see them anymore in Iron Man 3 or the rest of the Avengers movies. So maybe Iron Man 2 is the place where he just kind of loses control. He's so popular. He has all this responsibility, yet the chess piece in his chest is killing him. And so, like, there's a lot of stuff in there going on, but that's a big complaint of mine for the movie. It's just like it doesn't really deal with all this stuff very well. So again, going back to the suits, I'm sorry, that's a way long tangent. And sometimes when I'm talking about these tangents, I have to remember where I'm going. The suits, he's just reiterating the suits. But the main thing about this movie is like Rhodey's relationship with Tony Stark and the chess piece that's killing him. So that's all kind of connected together. But to answer your question, the only significance is that there's always new suits.
Okay. So the Mark IV that was said it was a waiting upgrade. Is that the one that he uses during the race at Monaco?
No. I'm glad you brought that up. Iron Man had, in the comics, he has a suitcase that he carries around with the Iron Man suits. So he would have a suitcase around, and whenever he has to turn to Iron Man, he goes somewhere, open the suitcase, put on the suit. So he always had a suitcase suit. So the little suitcase he had at Monaco was a callback to that, which I thought was great. I thought that was real cool. Like as soon as Happy pulls it up, like lifts it up, and you can see what it is, everybody knows it's a callback to the suitcase suit, which I thought was really cool. Okay, I'll make sure I put a link so everybody can see what that looks like. It's pretty good. That's pretty neat.
That's pretty cool. That's a good way for him to carry the suit around too, and it's kind of like the nuclear football that U.S. presidents have.
Yeah, but it's also cool too. Is like that suit's like limited. Like it's not as big or robust as the other suits that he has. Like I wouldn't think that suit has flight capability. It might have limited flight capability. So it's like that was him having a smaller suit like that just for emergencies is actually pretty neat. I thought that was cool. That was a cool little thing for him to do. 100%.
Okay, so that's not his usual Mark III. That's
no. It's just I'll post a link in our show notes. But if you look at the movie, it's the suit's thinner, so it's not as big. So it's very so. Usually when Tony puts the suit on, he's about 6'5", 6'6", maybe close to almost 7 feet tall. And Tony Stark's Robert Downey Jr. isn't that tall, so the suit makes him pretty big. It's actually in the Avengers movie, there's a scene where he's standing in the Iron Man suit right next to Captain America, and he's taller than Captain America, so the suit makes him pretty big. But the suit he uses at Monaco is way smaller, way thinner, so it's not as powerful as his other suits are.
Okay, cool. I didn't know to look for that, so I didn't really notice. Interesting. All right. Pepper Potts in this movie becomes the CEO of Stark Industries.
Yep.
Did that ever happen in the comic?
Yeah, it does. Mm-hmm. And actually, I didn't mention this, but Pepper Potts at some point has an accident, and she gets a chess piece just like. So this is after the movies are out, so the chess piece is a big part of the comics storyline at this point. So she becomes Rescue, I think. She gets a suit called Rescue, and she becomes like an Iron Man type superhero person at some point. So yeah, Pepper Potts being a CEO is definitely part of the comics.
Okay, was that before this movie, or was it a retcon?
I was kind of hoping you wouldn't ask that. I'm pretty sure it's a retcon. I have to dig into it. I'm almost 100% sure it's a retcon.
Okay, good. Well, it's interesting because in this movie, she becomes the CEO, and then Tony replaces her as the CEO within the span of one movie.
Did he replace her at the end?
I think so. I think at the very end, like she was fed up with it.
Maybe. I don't. They never really. I gotta go back to Iron Man 3. I don't know if they talk about that.
I thought there was a scene in this movie where that happens, but.
Hey, man, Iron Man 3 is a bad movie. I can't wait to talk to you about that because I'm just thinking about all the crazy holes in it. I'm like, ugh. But anyway, Iron Man 3 is a Christmas movie.
How is it a Christmas movie?
It's based in around Christmas time.
I don't remember any Run DMC songs, so you're gonna have to help me out there.
What do you mean?
You know how not Lethal Weapon, Die Hard has the Run DMC Christmas in Hollis.
Well, all I know is it's based around Christmas time. That's as far as I know about that. Anyway,
so
next question.
You saw a Christmas tree in Iron Man 3 is what you're telling me.
Yeah, that's it. Next
okay. All right.
Next question.
All right. Justin Hammer, is he from the comics?
Definitely, 100%.
What's he do?
He has a head of a company, just like he does in the movie.
Hammer Industries.
And he has at some point he definitely wears a suit. I believe I will have to check the show notes real fast. Hang on, I want to see if I can find a picture of the suit. If he wears a suit at some point.
So is it pretty much just like the movie where he's very competitive with Tony? They're
100%.
rivals. Okay.
Yes, 100%. I didn't do enough research on him, but he's like an old man in the comics. He like wears a robe. It's kind of funny, but he's pretty old in the comics. But yeah, 100%. He's from the comics.
Is he a pretty big character in the comics, or
no? He's mediocre at best. Like he has he's like from the 80s and 90s. He's not even worth talking about, to be honest with you.
How does he rank compared to Obadiah Stane?
Oh, they're in
prominence. They're
he's higher than Obadiah Stane, but that's not saying anything because like he's like a very like these like Obadiah Stane.
Yeah, I remember
Justin
you saying
Hammer,
Obadiah Stane like nobody cares about him.
Yeah, nobody cares about Justin Hammer either. Like nobody like they don't like, and this is reflective of Marvel and how they treat Iron Man characters. Like Iron Man wasn't a big deal until the movies were a big deal, and then all of a sudden they gave a lot of good writers, good artists to Iron Man. But before that, it was just a awesome book.
Okay. All right, we talked about this a little bit. Rhodey wears the Mark II War Machine in this movie.
Yep. No, that is not War Machine. The Mark II is an Iron Man suit. When they retrofit it and you see him at the end, that's the War Machine suit. Okay,
so War Machine is the Mark II Iron Man suit plus garbage, all the shotguns and miniguns and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. Like the minigun. So the classic War Machine suit has a minigun on the shoulder. That's how you can tell it's War Machine, which is like a kind of like a visual cue. So if you look at the Iron Man suit, it's red and gold, but it has a chest piece in the middle. That's how you can tell it's Iron Man. And War Machine has like a minigun and he's black and gray. So yeah, you can kind of tell the difference.
In the comics, did all of those add-ons to make it War Machine come from Hammer Industries?
No. In the comics, the War Machine suit was designed by Tony Stark. And if I remember correctly, Rhodey at some point has to get a new suit or do something to help Tony, I think, and he just takes that suit and it becomes like the War Machine suit. So like it's like I think Tony Stark designed it and then Rhodey just took it and then that was his suit. And then over time he reiterated it and worked on it to make it more of his.
Okay. Go ahead.
I want to talk about the War Machine stuff real quick. At some point in the comics, I think I talked about this in the Iron Man episode we did. Tony Stark goes away, and Rhodey becomes Iron Man for an extended period of time. I did talk about that. So this kind of sort of touches on that, but not as long. And again, it's rushed, but I think everybody wanted to see War Machine, and so that's why they did War Machine so fast. And it's fine because we'll see War Machine again in Avengers Age of Ultron. We won't see War Machine in Iron Man 3 because they redid him as Iron Patriot, and that's a long story that I'm not going to get into right now. But it's really interesting how they start War Machine in Iron Man 2. We don't see him again until like a bunch of movies later. We don't see War Machine again until Age of Ultron, which is a long time, which is really odd.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, but that is super weird.
Yeah, and then we see him again in so it's Age of Ultron, and we see him in Captain America: Civil War, and then of course we see him in Infinity War, and then we see him in So yeah, it's odd, really weird, but it is what it is. Like again, Iron Man 3 has a lot to explain, so I'm gonna have to watch it again. Unfortunately, ugh. But yeah, so the War Machine suit is definitely from the comics, and Rhodey taking and becoming War Machine is definitely in the comics.
Okay, all right. One of the main plot points of this movie is Tony Stark finding a replacement for Palladium.
Yes.
Is that a thing in the comics?
No. But please, listeners, if you want to correct me, you can. The idea.
I think I know what they did there is they needed some way to tie in this whole Howard Stark City of the Future Disney EPCOT thing, and so finding a replacement for Palladium was just their way to do that.
Yeah, I think that was part of it. I also think that part of it is in the comics, Tony Stark has a lot of health issues. There's a lot of times where Tony Stark is dying. He is unhealthy throughout the comics all the time. He's either dying or about to die constantly. And this is kind of tying into that, which I think is really interesting.
Is that like a variety of things? Alcoholism, shrapnel
in his chest. The suit, he's too reliant on the suit. He needs there's a point where he can't leave the suit. I remember there's a line where there's a comic arc where he can't get out. If he leaves the suit, he'll die. There's a lot. He ends up dying at some point and coming back to life. So there's a lot. So again, he's just unhealthy. And Iron Man. And you know what? All the movies kind of touch on that in some way or form, but not as heavy as I would like. But yeah, so. The Palladium chess piece, the chess piece is directly from the movies. The Marvel comics would retcon that and take that into the comics later. But the chess piece is all movie stuff. It doesn't have a lot of comic basis.
So in this one, when he gets the replacement for Palladium, his chess piece becomes a triangle.
It has a little bitty triangle in the middle of it. So it's a circle, but it has a triangle in the middle. Yes, sir.
Is that from the comics? The triangle versus the circle?
The suit, this is interesting, Mike. I'm glad you brought this up. There is an Iron Man suit that instead of the circle, it's a triangle in it. And I'm guessing that was the inspiration for the suit they used in Iron Man 2. Because there is a suit that it was a white and red suit, to be honest with you. Let me find it. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. I'll just send you a link. But it's a white and red suit with a triangle design in the middle of it. And I'll make sure I send you show notes. So that is, I think what they did was from a stylistic perspective, they just wanted to have a style type of thing to it. So that triangle suit was a way to make it a certain style. We won't see that suit again. We won't see that suit ever again. We'll see it never. So it's really interesting how they put all that work into the suit, but we'll never see it again.
Wait, so in the future movies, it's back to the circle?
Yep.
Okay.
It might be in a. You know what? I might be mistaken. It does show up in Avengers, but he replaces it later. So it does show up in Avengers. I am wrong. I don't want someone to listen to that and get mad at me. So it does show up in Avengers.
All right. I think I know the answer to this next question. So I'm going to try to work myself through this. All right.
All right.
Question is, hammer drones, is that a thing from the comic or not? I'm going to say it is not. Because the character that makes the hammer drones in this movie is Ivan. Ivan did not exist in the comics. His superpowers are like a composite of a bunch of different comic book characters. So no, hammer drones were not in the comics. Am I right?
Correct. Correct. Oh, okay. But it is not uncommon in the comics for there to be a villain that makes a bunch of like robot armored dudes that Iron Man has to blow up. Remember, in comics, you can't kill anyone. So in a comic book, you can't have Iron Man to. Well, in the comics that I read as a kid, I think the comics now are a little different because of all kinds of reasons. But when I was reading comics, Iron Man couldn't kill people. So if there was anybody in the suits and Iron Man blasted them, they had to either show him that they were alive or something. So having like a bunch of autonomous android robots is just a nice, convenient. It's a cool thing for Iron Man to kind of shoot. And I want to stop real quick. The last fight scene with Rhodey, the hammer drones, and Iron Man flying around in the expo and all that stuff, and then the final fight scene where Rhodey and Iron Man are fighting the drones. I will say this right now, and this is going to be kind of controversial. The fight scene with Iron Man and War Machine versus the drones at the end is probably my favorite minute of action in Marvel cinematic history. And that is super controversial, but it is so kinetic, it is so loud, and it's so fast. And both of them are doing things from the comics, like shooting things and they're blasting stuff, and it is just fun. I could have watched 10 minutes of that, and I don't know why they didn't do more of it. I feel like the whole movie was trying to get to this point, and when they got to that point, I was so happy. Like they were standing there, and then the drones were like doon, 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 and the music's like doon, and then the helmets drop, doon, doon, and they start shooting. It's just it's actually directorially brilliant. Like this, the helmets going click click is awesome, and then them shooting, awesome. Like the whole thing is awesome. So just a shout out.
I really liked where Tony flies down and rescues the kid who's dressed up like Iron Man.
You know who that kid is?
No.
For Marvel history, that kid is Peter Parker, Spider-Man.
So they have gone out and said that that's the case.
They have officially. So when Spider-Man came out, when Marvel Civil War came out and they cast Spider-Man and everything else, they did reveal in a press release or something that the kid that Iron Man saved was Peter Parker.
Okay.
That's just kind of neat. I think it's kind of neat. I don't know why. I just think it's people got mad, but I was like, that's neat. I like that. Like at some point, because like the kid's young, and like
it is in New York, right?
Yeah. He lifts his hand and Iron Man falls and blasts him. Like I kind of feel like that's a kind of a fun thing to kind of put in there. So that's fun. Anyway, the fight. You disagree?
I don't know if that makes me like the scene less or not.
That's fair, 100%. Yeah. But that fight scene at the end. Oof, that's so good.
All right, so tell us about the big bad guy. It's kind of a continuing theme with these early Marvel movies. The big bad guy at the end of the movie is, in some form, a copy of the hero of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, so this whole thing, the whole premise of Iron Man 2 is the government says, hey, Tony Stark, you're the only one with this technology. We need it to protect ourselves. And Tony Stark's like, no, because if I give you this, you're going to abuse it. Then Rhodey actually has like a compromise. Like, it's like, and this is something I made up. I think the movie definitely talks about this. Rhodey's like, I will have a suit like Iron Man's, but I will be in control of it. So Tony Stark trusts me. He trusts me with the technology. The government trusts me. It's a compromise. Make sense?
Yeah.
But the idea that the technology can get out there and can be abused is an interesting storyline, and it's from a comic storyline called the Armor Wars. The Armor Wars. What happens is that Tony Stark's technology gets taken by a bunch of evil dudes, and he has to go around the world and find his technology and stop people from abusing it. They're actually making a Disney Plus series called Armor Wars with Don Cheadle. So Don Cheadle, as War Machine, will have to go around and find Tony Stark's tech, which is going to be great. I think it's going to be great. It's going to be fun. So the idea that at the end you have Ivan Vanko in a Iron Man suit fighting Rhodey and Tony. I know we've talked about this as far as like this whole idea that the villain has to be like an evil copy of the hero is getting kind of old. It's kind of representative of the comic, though. It's also kind of representative of storytelling archetypes, to be honest with you.
Right.
In this case, you can't have Ivan Vanko in like a t-shirt fighting Iron Man and War Machine. We need a big villain. We need a big fight scene. What can we do? And so having him in a big suit fighting both of them is fine. I like the suit. I think it's kind of fun. I kind of wish they did something more unique. And I do agree with you in that sense. But this is the last time we're going to see that complaint. You won't see this. You won't see that again. The rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies don't do that anymore. It becomes far more nuanced.
Yeah, I actually think it plays a little bit better in this movie than the others because of Ivan's backstory,
Yeah,
his dad was there at the very beginning, kind of kicking off this whole the technologies that led to Iron Man. So it kind of makes sense that in this case the big bad guy is somewhat like Iron Man.
Yeah, and Ivan in the story in the movie, Ivan has a real complaint. I mean, when Ivan is in jail and Tony Stark is asking him, Ivan says, "My father saved your life," and he means it as far like my father helped design the technology that is keeping you alive.
Right.
And there's never like in a real world, Tony could have been like, "Hey, Ivan, listen, you've been dealt a bad hand. I'm sorry you have to use violence to help you understand what's going on with you, but I am sorry that what happened to you happened. It was wrong. Like, Anton was a spy, but that doesn't excuse the fact that Howard Stark just took the technology and said, this is mine now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, there was never a moment where Tony Stark is like, what my father did was wrong. Like, in fact, Tony Stark in that movie is like, my dad's teaching me stuff. My dad's teaching me. Like, in reality, it's like, ugh, my dad was kind of a jerk. Like, he took this technology as his own. He never really gave praise to this guy, even though he was a spy. I think it was wrong what he did, and like it's just kind of one note. But again, it's fine. It is what it is. We're not going to get that high level of psychological thinking for a little bit in these movies, or actually for a while. But still, I kind of it's just kind of this rubs me the wrong way how he treated Ivan. Like Ivan has a real complaint. But, it is what it is.
Right. All right, what else? What else can you tell? I'm out of questions.
Questions. Oh Lord. Okay. Yeah. Black Widow. She's in this movie. I tried to do some research to find some depth for Black Widow. Mm-hmm. I couldn't do it. Now we already talked about how the Marvel movies are starting to base itself around the Ultimate line, and the Ultimate storylines are pretty bland. I mean. Black Widow was a Russian spy who became an American spy. She works for S.H.I.E.L.D. It's like it's not a whole lot to it. I was watching the movie again, and Scarlett Johansson is fine in this movie, but it's obvious that like sex sells, right? It's like Scarlett Johansson was just there to wear tight dresses and be pretty, and it was really upsetting to me. It's like we won't get a proper version of Black Widow, I think, until Avengers Endgame. I was watching Avengers Age of Ultron, and there's a scene where she has her black suit on, and it's tight, but it's like unzipped almost down to her belly button. Like we get a lot of cleavage. I'm like, what is this? Like it's like the comics.
What about the scene in this movie where she I guess it's the Hammer Labs or something. She infiltrates this building.
She has a good fight scene. That's a fun fight scene. It's good stuff. But like, ooh, a sexy woman fighting. It's the same thing. And it's just like, I don't know. It's just, I understand why they had to do it. Black Widow's an interesting character, but I think the comics have struggled with her as well. I don't see.
To quote Jessica Rabbit, isn't Black Widow drawn that way?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But listen, I'm really worried about this Black Widow movie because they're going to have to do an immense amount of characterization for the Black Widow, Natasha, to make it work really well, and I'm concerned it's not going to happen. So there's like, if you look, Marvel
I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, but Disney and Marvel have not blanketed the airwaves with Black Widow coming out. Like when Falcon and Real Soldier was about to come out, they couldn't stop showing it. You were seeing it on Twitter. You were seeing it everywhere. Black Widow is barely out there. And when's it come out? Like soon, right?
They've been shuffling the dates around, so I'm not positive. I think it's either late June or early July.
I'm worried about that movie. I'm going to watch it, of course, but I'm worried about it. But anyway, Black Widow is fine. Scarlett Johansson's good in it. They developed the character over time. But I have real complaints about Black Widow throughout the Marvel universe. As I have real complaints about how Scarlett Johansson played her. But it is what it is.
So the plot of this overall movie does not come from the comics. Right?
Elements of it do, like the armor wars, Tony Stark being sick, the creation of War Machine. There's pieces here and there, but the entire plot is not from the comics. No.
Okay, so my guess is, I mean, it felt kind of like Black Widow's just in here to lead into future
Oh,
movies.
100%. Because we get a lot of Nick Fury, a ton of Nick Fury. We get connections between Howard Stark creating Shield and stuff like that. This is it's like the movies. This movie is doing a tremendous amount of work to get ready for the Avengers, and we're about to get Thor right after this. Then we're gonna get Captain America, the first Avenger, and then we get Avengers right after it. So like this movie has to do an immense amount of work to get ready for Avengers.
So I will say I've already watched Thor in preparation for our next episode, and Black Widow in this movie gets a way better introduction than Hawkeye does in Thor.
100%. Oh, 100%. Yeah, I agree with that. You can barely even remember that Hawkeye's in Thor. But no, it is what it is. What else? I think that's really it. Like Iron Man 2 is fine. It's a good movie. It's better than some of the other ones we've watched. But I'm looking forward to Thor. I'm really looking forward to Captain America: First Avenger. Captain America: First Avenger might be my favorite Marvel movie. So like again, Iron Man 2 does some good work, but it's some noticeable story elements. It's also, did you notice when you're watching Iron Man 2 all the dead scenes? Like there would be scenes where I would just skip. I didn't miss anything. Did you know? It's just kind of slow. It's a slow pace. That whole scene where there's like the map from the Stark Expo, and then he takes the map and he's able to take all this stuff off of it and finds like the element. Like that just took forever. You know, it's like I don't know. It's just I don't know. And then like I don't know. It's just I don't know. It is. They
were definitely showing off some of their extra budget and some of their extra visual effects in this movie that they didn't have in Iron Man.
Yeah, but they could give me another 2 minutes of fight scene with War Machine and Iron Man. Like give me that. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So
any more questions?
That's about it for you as far as the movie goes. Let's talk about the post-credit scene then.
All right. Post-credit scene is Thor. Right? We get
Thor is not in it at all.
No, but Coulson drives to New Mexico.
New Mexico.
Right?
Yeah.
And he stops and he sees a bunch of like trucks driving around, this hammer that's stuck in the ground, and he says, "I found it." And then we see Thor's hammer, which is awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
Anything to say about that? Like
no. It's like it's setting up for Thor, so we won't really have anything to talk about until we get to Thor. But the idea that Shield is out in the world looking for superhero elements and stuff like that, I find interesting. And to be honest with you, that post-credit scene with the Thor's hammer is probably the coolest sign that we're about to get a developed, unified universe, right? Like, I like that a lot. I do. I have to watch Thor again, which I'm going to probably do maybe today, maybe sometime next week. But it's good stuff, and I think it's going to be. Of course, it turns out good. Of course, it's this Marvel movie, so it turns out good for everybody. But as far as is there a place in the comics where the hammer is like that? There are a couple places in the comics where a hammer is like that, but we'll have to talk more about that next week.
So this is now three movies into the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
We've got Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, and Iron Man 2. So yeah, this is the third movie. Yep. And
so 2 out of 3 of those have pretty good post-credit scenes.
Yeah, and all 3
does not.
Yeah, but all 3 have post-credit scenes, and all 3 have connections with Stark Tech and stuff like that. And so all 3 are doing some really good work. So as far as trying to build a patient unified universe, I mean, these movies are coming out years apart, but they're still, it's like Marvel says, we're going to do this. We know what we're doing. We have a blueprint. We're going to stick to it. We're going to take our time. They definitely do that, and I respect that a lot. Like, so if you look at what DC did as far as Warner Brothers and the DCU, they were trying to rush it as fast as possible, and it just didn't work. You can't rush it. So Marvel taking this time and getting fans hyped, getting all that stuff ready, I think worked for them 100%. I mean, I'm critical for this because by nature I'm critical about this stuff, but as a comic books fan, I couldn't be more happier. If I just walked out of Iron Man 2 and I saw an end credit scene, I couldn't be happier as a comics fan. I couldn't just seeing Don Cheadle as War Machine is just a thrill. It's like I couldn't be happier.
Right. Cool. All right. So next time Thor.
Thor next time. Yep. All right.
What should our listeners tell their friends?
Tell their friends to listen to this podcast if they are curious about certain things about comics from the movies that you might not have heard. And also tell your friends that, listen to this podcast is just a good thing that you should do just for your soul.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
And where can they find this podcast, Mike?
They can find this podcast almost everywhere that you can find a podcast. You can also find this podcast on YouTube if you want to do that. So there's that.
What's your favorite place to listen to podcasts? Just as a side note.
For me, I'm an Apple Podcast person. How about you?
I have the podcast app on my phone that is the only app on my phone that is uncontrolled. Like I don't curate it. The apps just do what they want. I need to go in there and actually delete all the subscriptions and start over because I definitely just let that do what it wants to do. But yeah, I'm glad it's on Apple Podcast now, so I'll grab it. It's listen to myself and say, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, that wasn't right.
Right.
And we're also on Twitter. What's our Twitter handle again?
Twitter handle is Super Sideshow.
Yeah, and
so anything that Jarvis said that was wrong, you could totally let us know on Twitter.
Please. And my Twitter handle is jslacks, JAYSLACKS. So you can also DM me and say you're stupid. You did not read the Iron Man issue number 4, blah blah blah. You can definitely do that as well.
Or you could be nice about it and just point out that, hey, you got this wrong. Here's a very helpful link.
Yeah.
Do better in the future, Jarvis.
Or just be mean. I'm fine with that. I'm okay with meanness on the internet because I ignore it most of the time.
Right.
No, and I'm thinking also too. At some point, I was looking. Maybe I'll do one of those things on Twitter where I talk to people. Mm-hmm. What's that called?
Yeah, the Twitter Spaces.
Yeah, maybe I'll do a Twitter Space if it ever gets demand. All right. But yeah, we're good. Iron Man 2. There we go. In the can.
All right. Yeah. Listen to us. Rate us on your apps and review us.
Please.
And we'll see you next time.